This episode will focus on a secure mobile workforce. I'm your host, Francis Rose, with the Government Matters Thought Leadership Network. The Biden administration is considering ways to extend the mobile work world the pandemic created. That means agency leaders will continue to work on securing their networks and their data so employees can work anywhere. Joining me first, Thresa Lang, Deputy Chief Information Security Officer at the Department of Homeland Security, and Jeff Frederick, Senior Manager for Solutions Engineering at Yubico. Thanks very much to both of you for joining me. Thresa, I want to start with you. How did DHS evaluate cybersecurity options and deploy them during the transition to remote work at the beginning of the pandemic? And how are you continuing to evaluate and deploy them as it appears remote work is going to be around in a lot greater volume than it was before?
DHS did a remarkable job in transitioning. We were able to meet the increased workload very easily. We went from about 10,000 employees at headquarters doing telework to about 70,000 overnight. We were able to leverage our existing security options to meet our mission needs. We had put in Office 365 before the social distancing guidelines were issued, and we found that that was very helpful for us. So we had approved telework agreements. We had a solid infrastructure. We had government-approved GFE equipment for the people to use, and we were ready to work for an extended period of time away from the office. And right now we are shoring up everything even more, and we are ready to continue if that is what we need to do.
What do you think the steps were that you took, Thresa, that got you that you were already in that posture? I hear agencies all across the government that were saying, well, we did this or that or a third thing and because we did that in 2018, 2019, that's why at the beginning of 2020, we were ready to make this transition to remote work. What do you think the elements of that were at DHS?
We were moving to the cloud. We made sure that we had everything cloud ready. We made sure that our people were ready to work in a mobile posture. Right now, our infrastructure is solid enough and good enough that people are comfortable working from tablets and from phones because they have access to everything they need, just as if they were at their regular work desktop computer. So our change has been transparent to the user, and there has been a lot of training to make sure that the people are comfortable using the solutions that we have, and that's made a huge difference for us.
Jeff, welcome. Thanks very much for joining the conversation today. As you look across the enterprise of the government, what are organizations doing? What groundwork have they laid to have the kind of success that Thresa is talking about at DHS?
Thank you for having me today, Francis. I think the first thing they realize is the CAC and the PIV don't really work in this telecommute and mobile environment. How do you use a smart card on a mobile device like tablet, like Theresa said? So using YubiKeys and security keys, you can really provide a strong credential for your users that they can use on these mobile devices. The other area is personal devices, using your computer at home. These keys also allow you to secure your personal accounts, which if you're using a personal device is a threat vector as well.
What has been the holdup to identity management? We've been using PIV cards and HSPD 12 cards for 15 years, I want to say. What has changed the use prospect? What has made them more difficult to use over time, Jeff?
Well, I think the entire change in the industry and moving to more cloud services. The cloud services aren't friendly to the PKI authentication that the CAC and the PIV provide. So the FIDO technology, which is now coming online from Google and Azure AD and things like that, have really made have exacerbated the issues that with the CAC and the PIV. And now there's a viable solution to that for cloud services. And everybody's moving to the cloud, as we know.
Thresa, you talked about some of the groundwork that you laid at DHS to prepare for, not knowing, of course, that you were preparing for a pandemic, but that positioned you to respond well during that. What have you been doing at DHS regarding identity management in order to get people out in the field, but know they were the right people that should have been on the network?
We've been aggressively working on our derived alternate credentials. So the GFE that people are using, we have the derived credential right now, and we have our ICAM steering group to make sure that we have governance and that we have a structure for enforcement, and we continue to improve on those things.
How are you trying to improve on them? What will make them work better than they do now, Thresa?
I think a little bit more training. Training is what we have found is the key to all of this, making sure that our people understand exactly what they need to do to be able to work successfully in that remote or telework environment.
How did you evaluate, Thresa, the opportunities that you had, the potential tools that you had, whether they worked or didn't work, whether it was identity management or anything else in this transition from most of people being in the office to most people not?
We did. Of course, you always look at to see what people are asking for at the help desk to see what kind of help they need. But we assumed going in that since it was a new environment, that people would need the training. And we found that we gave extra training. And OCIO noticed that within 30 days of our training for the Teams platform, that the usage increased over 438%. So we know that at least 60% of our headquarters staff is very comfortable using the Teams platform.
Jeff, what are organizations doing across government to provide that information to people and to learn from their workforces what the holdups are, what the stopping points are that are holding employees back from being able to work remotely and work remotely safely?
I think Theresa nailed it. It's really the training. As you move to a different physical device for authentication, it is a change. Obviously, you want something that is similar to what the end users are used to with their CAC and their PIN, but you also need to make sure. So I think training is the number one. He mentioned the derived credential solution that DHS is deploying. We are working closely with DHS right now to enable our devices to work with their derived credential solution. So they already have that information, so there'll be less training involved because they're already used to using their PIN of the CAC and derived credential. And then just helping the end user get their equipment set up properly for home. The telework is a change because they're not using that GFE or that government equipment. And helping them enable their phones or their tablets or their personal computers to support these technologies.
Jeff, there was a period of time about 10 years ago when bring your own device was a thing, and I want to say it only lasted as a thing for maybe 18 months or 2 years, and most agencies kind of threw their hands up in the air and said, it's too hard to secure all these different devices. We don't know who's coming or going, all those kinds of things. Do you foresee that changing in the future now that people have demonstrated really that they can, to some degree, use their own devices? Is that idea coming back, do you think? Is it due for a renaissance?
It is absolutely coming back. The pandemic has brought this back to the forefront. Some of the new technologies, the virtual device interface technology. So instead of having data stored on your personal phone, government data on your phone, you're using a VDI infrastructure, so all the data is on the back end. And now the new capabilities of the FIDO authentication that allows you to have a strong, secure authentication token that isn't a heavyweight. And the fact that you can now use these. So absolutely, it's coming back. We're seeing huge interest in updating that capability.
Thresa, how do you evaluate an individual, or maybe it's not possible at an agency like DHS, to evaluate an individual employee's setup, the gear that they want to use, in order to be able to determine what the security posture, the security landscape looks like for that person's suite of devices? Because lots of people are using, I imagine, more than one.
This has been a little bit easier for us because mobility was a requirement well before the pandemic. So our people have government furnished equipment. They understand the risks that they have when they connect outside of the office. They have hard training all year long on the guidance that we give them for remote work, for secure connections, for video conferencing, for phishing, cyber awareness, cyber hygiene. These are very important within DHS, and they are things that we have consistent training on, and we train throughout the year. So our people were prepared to step into this role.
Jeff, a quick final thought. What do you see as being the future role and the future job for people whose responsibility is to ascertain security of the network? What does this look like a year from now or 2 years from now, as agencies find themselves probably still in some pretty high volume of remote work?
I think it's going to get infinitely harder. The attack vectors are only increasing, and the attackers are getting more smarter and more brilliant. So I think it's going to get worse. But some of the new zero trust initiatives that the entire federal government is moving to are really going to enable some of these technologies to be successful and not be as vulnerable. Again, that's going to require understanding who your end users are and allowing them to prove their identity in a trusted way. And the CAC and the PIV are great solutions for that, but they're not the be-all, end-all. So the government does need to implement new technologies like FIDO as well.
Jeff and Thresa, thanks very much for joining me today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.